What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Carson of the Callous Daoboys. It's great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. It was only a matter of maybe an hour ago that I was able to pronounce your band name correctly. I was actually like Googling that, like, how do I pronounce this?
Oh,
I
okay.
thought it was like the
Yeah,
the Callous Daoboys or something like that. How many people have mispronounced it so far?
sure. I mean, once people realize what it's like a joke on, they usually figure it out. Once people realize that it's the Dallas Cowboys with the letters reversed, they're usually like, "Oh, okay, I get it now."
Yeah.
So,
That's genius, by the way. I think you need to start a trend with that. Like make that sort of like make it like the York Yankees or something like that. That needs to be a trend happening.
sure. I mean, we've kind of already done it, so I hope another band doesn't, completely copy it. But I'll try and put like a trademark on doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, if you could start a trend of that happening, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It'll be
Sounds good.
it'll be a breath of fresh air from so many bands using the similar words and whatnot. So this will be a cool new
Sure.
thing to
Yeah.
have. But on a more serious note, it is so great to have you here because your new album, Celebrity Therapist, is absolutely awesome. That came out in September. Being that this is the third Callous Daoboys album, was this just like picking up where you left off after Die on Mars, or was this like stepping into more uncharted territory and sort of like a new start for the band in a way?
This is actually our second album. I know Wikipedia has one of our EPs listed as like a full length, but it is our second album. We Die on Mars was like our first record with like a new drummer and a new bassist, and we really did think that we had something to prove with that record. And we were kind of toiling in obscurity before that album came out. Our name was out there, but we weren't terribly popular. um so I guess when Die on Mars came out, we were really really surprised at the response, and the fan base that kind of rose out of that we were extremely grateful for. So, I mean, Celebrity Therapist was us picking up where we left off, but it was similarly um, just us, trying not to repeat ourselves and, trying to capitalize off the momentum we had.
Well, it seems like, the Callous Daoboys, from the name to the sound, is a very experimental band. When you compare, like, the My Dixie Wrecked EP to, like, the Celebrity Therapist to the Die on Mars album to Animal Tetris, it almost seems like that there's a lot of different territory that's explored. Is it fair to say that trying new things is almost basically essential to the songwriting process for you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, like, and I think that the songwriting process is like, trying sounds that we haven't done before and also failing at it. I mean, I think failure is a very big part of the process. For Celebrity Therapist, I wrote like a 10-minute song. Like I wrote like a 10-minute song, and the rest of the band was like, we've never experimented with long songs before, and this sucks. So you need to go back to the drawing board. And experimenting with like long songs with multiple movements and passages and stuff like that was always something that we had wanted to do, but we had to try and fail at it a few times before we got it right. And we're not going to release anything that we think is a failure.
Yeah. Does it ever start off with a preconceived vision in a way, or is it like a very improvisational process in songwriting?
I think I always go into writing music for this band. I always go in pretty prepared and with a pretty good idea of what I want to do. Whether or not it's a good idea is, decided once it's done, and everyone can listen to it and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling this," or "I'm not really feeling this," or "This is not the vibe." Start over. So, if it was a little more improvisational, I think we would probably put out more garbage.
Mhm.
Uh, but we do go into it very prepared with sort of an idea of what we want in our heads. Yeah.
when you compare every song, especially on the Zoo album, when you go from Violent Astrology to Star Baby, you know, and you have like all these different songs with these many different vibes and emotions, there's a lot of different things to interpret. Is every song representative of a specific emotion or point of view that you were having, or is this music meant to be an escapism and you're sort of like addressing elements outside of who you personally are?
It's a little bit of both. I would say every song has its own very unique identity. Um, all of them are pretty long and all of them are very different. I don't think any two songs on Celebrity Therapist sound the same, or really have the same vibe to them, which I love. I think it's super super cool. Um, but each one is kind of its own little exploration, its own little story, its own animal, really. And there's a lot of things that I'm talking about regarding my life outside of the band that definitely had to come out. It had to come out of me just because I was dealing with it. Um, but I think uh, I think when it came to writing them individually, we definitely wanted each one to represent something different, but also tie into the same themes.
Yeah. When it comes to like the sort of concept behind it and what you're singing about, could a lyrical idea maybe determine the direction of the music itself, or does music need to be in place before any sort of lyrics come into mind?
They're very much intertwined. I mean, we try and do as much. We try to do as much of like like if I know the lyrics are going to be kind of sad, or if I know they're going to be angry, the instrumental should theoretically match that. But I think that we usually have all the music before any vocals are written for it. But Star Baby, for example, Star Baby, I wrote all those lyrics way before we had any instrumentation to it. And I was just like, okay, how do I want to say this? And like the quickest way to say it was with that disco beat, and all that stuff. And so it's kind of different every time. It's sort of a case by case basis. And I do think the Star Baby doesn't sound like any other song on the record. And Star Baby was one song where it was like, well, this clearly needs its own, like, it is its own thing. And the lyrics were written first. It might be the only one in which the lyrics were written first, now that I'm really thinking about it.
Mhm. You ever worried you'll have the best lyrics ever and then they're always like one syllable over like every arrangement that you have?
Well, see, that's the beauty of mathcore, my friend. Is if it goes one syllable over, I just add an extra beat.
Fair enough. That's the beautiful thing of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It is a very
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I will say that the Callous Daoboys are like the most conventional, unconventional band in mathcore. That's how I like my review of
I would
what you
agree with
guys
you.
do.
I would agree with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you did open up the hornet's nest now to the genre debate, because I've heard a lot of different bands of different styles be labeled as mathcore, and I do think that like bands sometimes get wrongfully called that or like confused with it. Like a lot of people have called post-hardcore bands like Glassjaw or Poison the Well as, or even bands like Every Time I Die as mathcore. But then like I've heard Dillinger Escape Plan called mathcore. New York homies
Sure.
Car Bomb have called mathcore. Is there like an essential element into the sound that makes a band mathcore?
I mean, the playing around with wonky time signatures is probably, I guess, what I would describe it. But like Tool and Radiohead do that all the time. So it's like, are Tool and Radiohead mathcore bands? Um, Glassjaw does some interesting stuff with their time signatures. But I think it's more incidental. I think it's more just like, oh, this riff was written in 6, and the verse is still going to be in 4/4, or I Glassjaw is one of my favorite bands like on the planet Earth. So I mean, I don't want to take anything away from them, but I think Car Bomb and Dillinger and Every Time I Die are very accurately described as mathcore. But I'm not the mathcore police. Like, I'm not gonna walk around, telling bands, who's mathcore and who's not. So I mean, not me to determine, but I think if I were to show an alien what mathcore is, I'd probably show them Car Bomb.
Definitely. And Car Bomb, shout out
Yeah.
to those guys. They're great guys, and I don't know how they do what they do. That's just on another level of craziness.
Oh yeah, I mean they're the reason. When I found out that Car Bomb doesn't play to a click track, I was like, we're not playing to a click track. Fuck that. Like, because I mean, like to be quite honest, I don't think it would make any sense in our ears to have a metronome going. And just as like it wouldn't make any sense for Car Bomb to have a metronome going.
A
So
click track in a click track in mathcore makes as much sense as a gentle love ballad in death metal. It just doesn't. It's not needed.
sure, sure. Well,
Yeah.
I'm ready to write a gentle death metal love ballad. So just you wait, Alex. Just you wait.
You know what? It was thought of on here. Just give us a
Of
shout out.
course, of course,
Just name
of
Heavy New
course.
York in the liner notes, and it'll be greatly appreciated.
Of course, I can do that.
Being that your music has so many different elements in different time periods, is it better if everybody in the band is sort of like in the same headspace or is feeling the same about every song? Or could all of you being in your different states of mind and having different ideas maybe actually help enhance the sound of the Callous Daoboys?
I mean, we all have very different tastes. There's very few bands that all of us agree on. Um, I think that one of the only bands that all of us really love and all of us agree on is the Dillinger Escape Plan, or the Chariot, or Every Time I Die. There's very few bands where it's like, oh, I love this band, and everybody else in the band is like, oh, this rocks. Also, it's usually like, turn this shit off. Um, for example, I mean, our bassist is like knows way more about death metal than I ever will. And I like death metal. I like a lot of death metal bands, but they bring this element of the way that they play bass that is so different from anything that I would ever think of to do, because they are listening to like a ton of technical death metal, and they can name you the back catalog of every Suffocation album, and all that stuff. So I think it's great that we all have different influences and that we're all listening to something different. But when it comes to the songwriting, we don't move forward with anything unless everybody's feeling it, unless like it's like, the possibility of like, oh, we might have to play this song for 10 years is always there. And it's like, do we want to play this song for 10 years? And the answer's got to be yes from all of us for us to, move forward. So.
Mm-hmm. In order for you to get inspired to write, whether it will be lyrics or musical ideas, is it better if you're more kind of like alone in your element of isolation, being that isolation is such a great fuel for creativity? Or is it better to be sort of in the company of your bandmates when everybody is sharing ideas at once?
It depends, because like, while I love everybody in my band, sometimes I'm like, hey, let's sit down and write, and they're just like, let's sit down and make guitar noise for an hour and a half. So sometimes I would say isolation for the most part. Usually I will start with an idea, and then I'll bring it to the rest of the band, and we'll kind of move from there, of like how I want the song to move, or how I want the song to work, or what I'm comparing the song to, as far as like another band's. For example, yesterday we started on a song that sounds like a post metal version of Roundabout by Yes. Like, it's really cool. I really love it, but like I came up with the first two riffs completely on my own, and then brought it to the rest of the band yesterday, and we're like kind of figuring out how it moves right now. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's isolation, and then I bring the rest of them in.
Do you need to look for inspiration? Is there a specific place that you go to in order to cultivate ideas, or does inspiration just strike out of the blue for you?
I've found that trying to get inspired by things usually stifles creativity. And when something doesn't come out exactly how what inspired it came out, um, it usually is just a subject to disappointment immediately. Whereas like when the ideas just come to me, it's so much easier to think, um, just with a clear head, and just like, a hook coming to you, or, just sitting down with a guitar with no goal, and writing a riff that way. I think that's like way more productive, and usually our best songs come out of that, instead of like, oh, let's make a song that sounds like, this Chiodo song, or let's make a song that sounds like this from first to last song. That usually means that we're going to scrap something.
Oh, from first to last. That's the first time that band was ever brought up on this channel. Thank you for bringing
Oh,
up.
really?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a classic
I
right
love
there.
that band.
Dear Diary, my teenage angst has a body count. I mean, you don't get more of an emo album title than something like that.
I prefer the one after it. I prefer Heroin, but yeah, I love that band to death.
Yeah, I mean, Dear Diary, was on my favorite game, Burnout Takedown. So like, I just needed to.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's this nostalgia aspect behind it. Going back to the
Hell yeah.
going back to the lyricism, and this just maybe could also apply to the music as much as the lyrics too. But do you think I've always said that art is life, and when you bring it into the world, it could grow and develop, and sometimes eventually die as well. Do you think that the music can evolve as you evolve as an artist, or do you prefer if Animal Tetris stays in 2017, Diamar stays in 2019, and Celebrity Therapist stays in 22 in a way?
Um, I think I would prefer that. I think I would prefer it to stay where it is, but that's not for me to decide exactly. That's for the audience and the people consuming it to decide. Um, and there are some. I mean, we recorded Celebrity Therapist in 2020, and there are some lines on it. Oh,
Yeah, that happens.
there are some. Okay,
Yeah.
there are some lines on Celebrity Therapist that like didn't really mean much to me back then. It was just like a line that I thought was that I was like that's cool, that fits. And now it's just like holy shit, like I know exactly what that line means now. I know exactly what I was going through. I know exactly why I wrote that line. And same with Diane Mars. There's a lot on Diane Mars where I'm just like I thought that meant nothing, but I think that might be just reflective of what I was going through. um, I haven't listened to Animal Tetris probably since the day it came out because I was just like very unhappy with how that record turned out as far as the mixing and the performances go. But I'm sure if I listened to it, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Um, and it's okay if they stay in 2017, but we are going to play an Animal Tetris song here in a few weeks for the first time in a few years. So we'll see how I feel.
Got to bring out them deep cuts, right?
People have been asking for it, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And when you mentioned also too, like with Celebrity Therapist, some of these songs are being written in 2020, and you work on a song for a long period of time. But I've always thought that a Callous Daoboys song really does capture a moment in time that you're not going to be able to experience once that is only captured within those 3 to 6 or whatever minute songs that those are. But do you find it maybe like the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to sort of like maintain that moment or that emotional spark that initially started the idea?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, like we sat on Celebrity Therapist for so long that I mean, and I've said this before. I've said this to a lot of people, not just in interviews, but we sat on it for so long that I really didn't know if it was good. And there were some days where I was like, man, this album sucks. And then there were other days where I was like, okay, now I think it's brilliant. And it was just like I was so worried about the way it would be perceived by other people, and we sat on it for so long that truthfully I did kind of become disconnected from it until we started playing it live. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I remember what brought me here, and what um I remember what sparked this and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily like, oh, we start this song and I start this emotional experience, or oh, I start this song and I go into this emotional experience. It's very fluid. Um, and every time we start one of the songs live, I'm like, oh fuck, I love this song.
Yeah.
And that goes for any of our songs. There isn't a single one that I don't like playing. And again, that ties into the whole like, when we make a song, it's like, do I want to play this song for 10 years? The answer has to be yes.
Of course.
So, uh, you know, uh, it's, you can definitely work on something for so long that you don't know if it's good, but, that's why you have bandmates who are honest with you. That's why you keep people around you who aren't, sycophants who are just going to tell you that everything you make is good. It just happened. I wrote this demo that I was really, really proud of, and I sent it to some friends, and they were like, hey, this sucks, right? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, this is not good. It's not catchy, and there's no riffs on it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I worked so hard on it. And then I realized like, hard work doesn't mean good work.
Yep.
So, that song got scrapped, and that's just how it goes.
Of course.
So,
Of course. You know what?
yeah.
Hey, to have bandmates like that, you shouldn't have it any other way. That's how you make the most quality
Absolutely.
work. And if you do feel very strongly about something, though, sometimes you have to fight to the death to defend it. So,
Oh yeah, of course.
yep. And I have two more questions for you, if that's cool. You mentioned playing live. Actually, I wanted to talk about that. Is there at all a similar energy that you channel into your live presence as you do when you are songwriting? Is there anything that bridges those two arts together, or do you consider them two completely separate arts and different forms of self-expression?
Um, they're two different ways of experiencing our band for sure. Um, and I try and keep them as tied together as possible. But when we write, we're not thinking about the live show. When we write, we're just like, how can we make the best song we possibly can, and then we figure it out live later. But I mean, the goal with us live is to always be giving 110%, no matter what song we're playing, no matter what part of the set it is, no matter how much we argued in the van beforehand, or whatever. The goal is to always just put on the best show we possibly can. And we want to play the songs correctly, but like at the same time, like I would rather one of our guitar players like play like 5 correct notes in a song and go crazy than play 100%. You know what I mean? Because music just, it isn't like a sport. Like it's not like a competition exactly. It's not a feat of athleticism. It's a show, and people paid their hard-earned money to come see us. So we're gonna put on the best show we possibly can.
Absolutely. And I think it's an extra challenge to, really, again, going back to that capturing that moment question, like to capture that moment again live. It almost seems like it's a different type of moment when you play a song live because you're in a different space, you're in a different venue, you're in front of different people, you're feeling something different that day. It's not like you're capturing the same moment live, you're capturing a different moment, right?
Yeah, no, it's a moment that is uh not often not being recorded, or it's being recorded for an Instagram story that'll disappear in 24 hours, or something like that. It's not a moment that is going to live on forever through some kind of media. It's going to, you are making memories with everyone that is at that show. So you better make some fucking good ones.
Definitely. And the final question I wanted to ask you is back to songwriting. How do you know when you're finished with a song?
um when we have the master for it back, I guess. It's hard to know. It really does depend on the song. With Star Baby, I knew that song was done when I had all of the demo vocals on it. And I was like, this is it. This is the song. And we walked into the studio with that version. And then with other songs like Field Sobriety Practice, like that one was like just a never-ending search for like what was done on that. Scott from Cryptodira, another New York band, shout out.
I know those guys very well. I went to school with Mike's wife.
Oh no way! You went to school with Lauren?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I love Mike to death. Mike is one of my best friends.
Great guys.
So Scott from Cryptodira was supposed to do a vocal feature on Field Sobriety Practice, and I was like waiting for him to send me something back, and he was just like, "Hey, sorry, I didn't do vocals on it." And I was like, "Okay." And he sent me back an audio file, and it was this ridiculous guitar solo, and I was like, "All right, man, like cool, great, awesome." And it was like, "All right, I guess the song is close to being done." And then we like added extra vocals to it, and like at one point there was like a ton of saxophone on that track, and we took it out because it just didn't fit. It really is case by case, but I usually know when a song's done when it's released on Spotify.
That was awesome. That was a good way of putting it
Thank
there.
you.
And
Thank you.
and again, I've always said you guys are like you guys are like a mathcore ska band with all the different elements that you have in there as well. Like you guys are the No Doubt of mathcore.
Sure.
That's how I consider you
I
guys.
love that.
Yeah, or the
I
Urge of
love that.
mathcore.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah, sure.
get that Gwen Stefani collaboration going. That would be awesome. But like,
Oh, I'll be sure to ask her soon. Yeah.
yeah, but
I'll
like,
use my channels of communication to get Gwen Stefani on the phone. Yeah.
you know what? You and I know some great people. Maybe there's got to be some pathway to get through there.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
But but like being that you have some songs that are more saxophone driven or more synth driven or more orchestral driven too, like I think there's always different pinnacle moments to tell when something is done as well.
Of course, of course. I mean, it's you know, I think there's a lot of figuring out like what the song needs, and not necessarily what we want on it, because those are two very different things. Like there's like what does the song need? It needs more noise here. It needs more melodicism here. It needs a catchier vocal line here, or it needs harmonies here. And that is the opposite of like, oh, we want a giant saxophone solo on this part. And it's like, well, is that going to work? Is that what it needs? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. So,
Who knows?
it's just, it's all a process of trial and error.
Hell yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for pulling over on the side of the road to talk with us. Hope I didn't cause you to crash on
Not
this.
a problem.
Yep.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Is there just anything? I do want to point out, by the way, you win the award. Your car has the best internet reception. The internet did not cut out once
Perfect.
throughout the course of this interview. Every time somebody's
yeah.
zooming me from their car, I usually have to repeat at least one or two questions. So you win the award for the best
Wow.
car. I don't
Love
know.
that.
I don't know what Elon Musk did to your car, but it's working for you. So
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
Is there just anything else that you'd like to promote with the Callous Daoboys in terms of tours, maybe even more new music? You just completed a kick-ass tour with Rollo Tomasi and Crypto Deer. What else could we be expecting?
We're about to announce another tour for early next year. We will be heading across the pond over to Europe to do a bunch of touring there. Some other big festivals in the U.S., some other big U.S. tours. We're staying busy, and we're hopefully going to record a new record in 2023. So,
yeah,
there you go.
Looking forward to hearing more. Thank you so much, everybody. We're
Awesome,
here with the Callous Daoboys. Be sure to check out Celebrity Therapist if you haven't already. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.